is Brian McKenzie. I get to serve as the chief executive at Contegra. Contegra is in the business of revitalizing the pyrethrum value chain. So pyrethrum is a chrysanthemum flower that with value addition we get an active ingredient for a natural insecticide. The great thing about it is it's tough on insects but is kind to us as mammals.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Round of applause for Brian. Thank you for being here. Tim.
Jambo, asante sana. I'm learning.
Karibu sana.
Tim Tan from Singapore, founder of Affordable Abodes. We've developed this product called Kanafcrete, which is a plant-based building construction system. And so we're here because we're going to embark on a journey in Uganda first, in the Masindi area, to look at the opportunity of developing affordable housing for community there. And leading the charge is Amos, and of course Dato Kim Tan. So I'm very privileged to participate in this event here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. CK, please.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
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 It's nice to be here. You look so beautiful from up here, I can tell you that. My name is Sike Japheth. I like to describe myself as an accidental entrepreneur. I didn't sign up to do the things I'm currently doing, which has turned out to be a 26-hour day job. I work with entrepreneurs who are building mission-oriented ventures to solve our most pressing challenges. Our first platform that we built is called Innovation Village. We run 5 incubators across the country in Uganda, but then we quickly learned that not all entrepreneurs are tech-oriented, so we built a platform called Motive, which stands for Makers of the Innovation Village, and it works with creative entrepreneurs to also build the ventures they believe in. Very nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to speak. Like many women, I usually have a bit of imposter syndrome. So I'm truly honored to be in this esteemed panel. Thank you. Thanks, Sam. My name is Patricia Okello. I've been an entrepreneur for 24 years, running a traditional graphic design business here in Nairobi. In addition to that, 12 years later, I founded an events communication business that does mainly corporate events for multinational companies. And in 2019, I then founded Kayana Create, which is a community of female entrepreneurs. And I never knew the terms accelerator or, incubator when we started. I just wanted to form a community of female entrepreneurs that had, where we could share the challenges that I myself had faced when starting my business. And the community has since grown to quite a number of over 250 members, touching over thousands of women. And we have been in Kampala and have hosted 2 very successful events known as Candid Conversations, Circles Women in Business. I'm truly honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jemima.
Hi, everyone. I think you're the real thing. Thank you so much for letting this young donkey speak. I am the co-founder of Liam Global, which was the video that you just watched on the Water Project. It stands for Love in Action Missions, and I've been working for 12 years, particularly with war-affected communities, mostly refugees, and with the specific purpose of trying to restore dignity and livelihoods.
Thank you. And we were just trying to source a chair for our last panelist, but it's still not on stage. Can I have Dan Klink please come up while we're still waiting? I would like you to introduce yourself to our panel. Dan Klink, CEO and founder of East African Power. Is he in the room? All right, he's not here. Okay, until he comes along, we'll continue. All right. So I wanted to get started by talking about the fact that many of us have been in the ecosystem for a number of years. Many of us have known each other for maybe, over 10 years. Some of us have been our new friends on this panel. And as we were talking about the creative solutions to, how to solve East Africa's problems, one of the things that we noticed is that we already know what our problems are, and we have many solutions that are already on the ground. The problem is being able to bridge that gap. So before we even talk about innovation and talk about the creative solutions to Africa's issues, I'd like to actually talk about what we're already seeing is happening on the ground. And so when we were speaking, one of the first topics that, Brian, you brought up was around human capital. So I thought maybe you could speak a little bit to that in terms of why that's important to the conversation around innovation.
So I think one of the big things from a human capital standpoint, we have the answers. I think one of the reoccurring things that you'll see is that I believe that we have everything that we need for the development of Africa. And so like at Contegra, one of our core values is ingenuity. And we see that from the design of our very complicated chemistry processing of the pyrethrum into pyrethrin. That was all designed in country. You see the different solutions that the team comes up with in dealing with revitalizing a sector that has died in Kenya. And you see creative solutions every time you go out on the road. The solutions are here, and one of the biggest capitals that we have in East Africa is actually the people, the human capital.
Perfect. And I know that there are, firstly, many accelerators on the ground, and you have a chance to meet so many who are already in the ecosystem who are doing really interesting things. I was wondering if CK and Pat, you could speak a little bit about the innovations that you're seeing that currently exist. What creative solutions are you seeing to some of the issues through some of the businesses you're working with?
Really. We recently helped an organization that was looking to fund a couple of female businesses through a competition. And in that competition, I had the opportunity of looking at possibly around 300 to 400 pitches. And the first thing that struck me was the structure. Although they were Kenyan businesses, they seemed to follow a structure that I felt was a very foreign structure. And I don't know if that's because of maybe the pitching processes that entrepreneurs go through in capacity building programs, etc. But then as a result, then it becomes very difficult for unique businesses, kind of like to stand out. And the reason I talk about this is during large competitions, it's usually a machine or an algorithm that kind of like sieves, the companies, and then, humans will only come in possibly at the last maybe 100 or 150 businesses. And businesses really need to stand out in order to, to make it to the final round. And what ended up happening is the businesses that, although it was a very tech-enabled competition, ironically, it's businesses that were not solely relying on technology, but more on human aspects that really did stand out in terms of innovation. So not to forget, as much as we're embracing technology, is to really think about the human being that you're serving in your solution. One such thing, and one organization I'll speak about, was had a solution for in Kenya, we had a big problem with health workers finding, opportunities in health centers. And so these medics had come up with an app in which they would be able to place health workers into locums. And I felt it was a great business, because not only were they looking at their technical competences across the board, which tend to be the same when you're looking in the health sector, but also at personalities that would be suited in certain sectors. I thought that was very interesting.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think one of the biggest lessons I've come across in the work that we do is how solutions and opportunities and ideas are evenly distributed. They're everywhere. How many entrepreneurs are in the room? Right? Entrepreneurs are the real MVP. In Uganda, where I work, a lot of them walk as if they're God's gift to Uganda because of the idea they are building. So we see so many young people building these companies and these ideas, and what we've come to learn is we now need to shift a lot of focus to the system of backing them up to make sure these ideas can come to life. because ideas, that's the easy part. Anybody can get that and the solutions. Just this morning, I was listening to someone speak, and they were saying that they were talking to that if you're a lawyer in the room, it will take 4 to 6 seconds for AI to learn everything that you have studied for the last 20 years, right? And then it will take another 6 seconds for that AI to cross-reference it with all other, case studies or cases across the world to be able to know what you want. So I think the idea we're now obsessing with really is how do we back those young entrepreneurs and those young people who are God's gift to our countries to be able to get the ability to see these ideas come to life. Thank you.
Thank you. And what I'm finding, so beautiful about just being in the room, and I'm hoping you're already feeling that through half the day today and just landing here, is we need more collaborative spaces like this, right, where we actually get to meet one another. I know some of these conversations we're having on stage today are conversations we've been having, again, for many years, decades even. And the bridging the gap really is as simple as making the introduction to what already exists and figuring out ways to collaborate together. If we could solve collaboration, I think across the world, we'd be living in a much more beautiful place. Now, I'm going to get up, and I'm going to ask Dan Klink, can you please join us on stage? Dan is the CEO of East African Power, and his contribution to our panel is going to be very transformative and helpful to our conversation. So thank you so much. All right, so a round of applause for Dan. Thank you so much. Okay, so one of the beautiful things about this panel actually is that there's so much transformation, and I'm saying really transformation that has scaled and made such impact in communities, not only across this continent, this country, but across the continent. So I'm going to ask Dan and then Jemima and then Tim to please speak a little bit about the work that they're doing transforming communities. And please tell us your story. Tell us the reason how that even happened, because I know that spark is what ignited all of that and really actually brought things to life. So without further ado, and please feel free to introduce yourself. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Sanjia. The last time we met was in Toronto.
I know, and in a
15
completely
years ago.
different context.
Yes.
And then I found out you were coming, and I was so happy. So now it's like friends meeting on stage for the first time in 15 years.
Yeah. Great to be here. Dan Klink, more or less a serial entrepreneur from Montreal, Canada, former investment banker, who fell in love with a girl who fell in love with Africa and ended up on the foothills of the Virunga Mountains in Rwanda asking what I was going to do. So it just happened to be a place where there was only 10% of the country having access to power. None of the businesses could operate with the highest cost of electricity in the region. Got involved with the first hydropower plant. Ended up hiring 1,000 people, blood, sweat, and tears. We delivered power, and that's the first IPP project. So is that transformational, seeing that triple bottom line, people, planet, profit, that, hey, this is something I want to dedicate my life to. And I've spent the last 10 years growing from that very first organic experience of failing forward to build up EAP to what it is, more than 10 countries, 150 staff, about 1 gigawatt in solar and hydro development. And our objective is to really make a sincere impact on more than 10 million Africans with access to clean, reliable, and affordable power. So, pleasure to be here. And
thank you. A round of applause for that beautiful work that you do. So the trick is to fall in love. Is that what I heard?
Yes, with the right person.
With the right person.
And in the right place.
Can I ask you actually, because I'm very curious, from the starting point to now, what keeps you inspired?
Oh, you see people get power for the first time, and it's just absolutely so exhilarating. And then you look at the stats and problem, what's the reaction, what's the solution, and you see that there's 600 million people still without power. 85% still cooking in the same way that was done thousands of years ago. The technology's there, the money's there, and how are we going to address this massive gap of 600 million people without access. So maybe a third of that through grid extension, a third through mini grids, a third through solar home systems. But the technology is here, the money's here. We need the entrepreneurs, we need the developers, and we need the solutions through partnerships. So I think when you look at a problem that seems impossible, that then happens and gets built and needs to be replicated, I think it's inspiring to see that the solutions in the puzzle pieces are all there. We need to just come together and make it happen.
You are walking the talk. Thank you so much for sharing. Jemima, please tell us your story of Liam.
Well, it's hard to follow that one.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say I'm a serial entrepreneur, but maybe more the accidental one. Right now in this country, we're experiencing some civil unrest. But most Kenyans, if not all, will remember that the last episode of the most deadly civil unrest we witnessed was in the 2007-2008 post-election violence, where I think more than 600,000 people were displaced completely from their homes. Most lost loved ones and entire homes and families. Have you ever wondered what happened to them? You see, the general narrative in the land is that they were resettled. But if you go onto the ground, you'll see that their reality was actually quite starkly different. Most of them were moved from campgrounds to campgrounds before eventually being settled in very dry, inhospitable land. And that's where our story began. Our story began in this refugee settlement in the middle of Laikipia County, central Kenya, and in a camp called Shalom. So when we were there, at that time, we were serving the refugees, we were ministering to them, we were building houses and trying to put the kids back in school. But then we were approached by a group of refugees, and these refugees, they had done all these feasibility studies to ascertain that the only way for them to get clean drinking water to survive, just merely survive, was if they could pipe it from the mountains that were 30 km away. Yeah, and so they came to us with this proposal, knowing that we had been working amongst them. And, you saw the video. The long story short is that we joined them in this endeavor, and somehow God made a way for us. So this water came in, and when it came in, we were so focused. We were just zeroing in on saving lives at that time. But when the water came in, we realized that the amount of water we were using was just less than 5% of our actual allocation. And we started to look. You see, all these refugees were settled with 2 acres of farmland. 1 acre is the size of a football field. Yeah, it was at that time useless to them, but if we could pipe the remaining water to the rest of the farmlands, we could activate 4,000 acres of farmland that would now become arable. So this is kind of like where we are in our project right now. We got the water to them, we're saving lives, but then we decided to do a pilot. And so we did a pilot with 140 farms that were just along the lowest hanging fruit, along the pipeline that was already laid. And I want to show you a picture. I wonder if you can see it. I can't really see the screen from up here. But can you see the before and after picture? I'm going to ask our team to put it up. Yes. What you see over here, it's the same farm, the exact same farm, 6 months before and 6 months after water arrived at this farm. This mama, who this farm belongs to, she said she had never harvested a single crop for the last 10 years of being settled on this desert land. Never once. Now she's able to pay 5 full-time workers, and on top of that, make a profit of about $900 a month, which she uses to put 3 of her children back into school. This is a far cry from the $2 per day that they were earning, and they're eating every once in 3 days. Yeah, and so this is the beginning of our next phase of the project. But we're hoping that if we can activate all the farmlands, then we're going to see a rise of a few thousand small entrepreneurs come up. And not only that, I think we have at least 2,000 farmlands in that area, which means 10,000 jobs are going to be created just by helping all these farms access water. And so this dry area, it's like the hungry today will become the feeders of tomorrow, and it'll become almost like a breadbasket of central Kenya. Yeah, and so that's kind of our story of transformation. Accidental entrepreneur.
Thank you so much. Aren't most entrepreneurs almost accidental for the most part, especially when they're in the impact space? As you were speaking through both of your stories so far, it just reminded me of the fact that the creative process of actually creating these solutions, right? It's like, what are the creative solutions? Well, what are the problems that are really just in front of me, right? And I have to figure out how to solve, because they have to be solved. And then you figure it out, and you do, and then it's this trickle effect that ends up having an impact that's at such scale. And so I know, Tim, you actually have a story that's very similar around Kanaf. Please tell us about this accidental find and how it's made an impact as well.
Yeah, thank you. So, Kanaf, what is Kanaf? Kanaf is a hibiscus plant. And believe it or not, the origins of the plant Kanaf are in Africa. Yeah? We had no idea what Kanaf was when we first started. Yeah? I spent the first majority of my life really in the cement, concrete industry, producing tons of carbon. And that's what we do when we build, right? When we build housing, we're just generating tons of carbon through concrete, through steel. And, it's really, if you talk about the built environment, it's producing 40% of the greenhouse gases. Yeah. So we came to this realization through Dato Kim. He suggested, why don't you look at some plant-based, biotechnologies which could probably, help solve this problem. And it was really through a series of miracles that we found Kanaf and were able to develop building material from this. So Kanaf Crete is the product that we came up with, and today it's now turned into a prefabricated modular construction system where we can build not only very affordable housing but very low cost housing, and at the same time be a carbon sink because the plant, which grows very quickly, in 4 months it'll grow to 4 meters, and we can harvest it and use it to build with. So the next step is really how do you create impact beyond just changing the way that we build. It's really in teaching farmers how to grow their own homes, right? So that's the next stage of our business, is to venture into places in remote places in Africa. We're starting in Budongo in Masindi area. There's a lot of arable land there which is just underutilized, and we're finding partners there to collaborate with us to set up farms and also educate the people there on how to process the farm produce so that they get better revenue from their farm produce, and also then use local materials, local binders. We can even use clays, we can use limes that are locally available, or even industrial waste that's locally available. How many of you watched the movie The Martian? Do you remember Matt Damon? He was stuck on Mars, and he was giving up hope, right? He thought nobody's going to come and rescue me. So he quoted this line, and please forgive me for saying this word: I'm going to have to science the shit out of this one. Right? You remember that? So that's exactly, what this is all about, right? None of us have any idea what we're doing, but someone is providing a way for us to do it. Yeah?
Thank you for the important work you do. We all thank you so much for the change that you're making. Now, I also have, you're all entrepreneurs, but I have, of course, our friends who work with them every single day as well. And I want to ask you some questions from kind of the foundational perspective of markets, for example. The importance of really, Brian, we spoke on the phone about the importance of identifying your market. Can you tell us a little bit about why that's important, especially as people are kind of coming up with these innovative solutions? What are some of the considerations we need to make when we're going to market?
Yeah, I think for the entrepreneurs in the house, as you set out, understanding what that end market is and what size of business that you're trying to build. As you look at, every business has a level of fixed costs. Are the markets large enough to cover that fixed cost for you to actually deploy your solution at scale. And so, understanding, is it for domestic? Is it for export? Do you need to be in multiple countries? These are all considerations as you are setting up and trying to evaluate the different opportunities that are out there. Also, I think a lesson that we're learning deeply at the moment is just the approvals, the regulatory access to those markets as well. So understanding that as you set out on your business, I think it's one of those things that I've seen a number of people fall foul with and are trying to solve afterwards. So one of the things about being in East Africa, whilst there are multiple countries, accessing those multiple countries is not the same. So as Contegra, our market is really export. So yes, we can sell domestically, but to sustain the capital to support the thousands of farmers that we're dealing with, we're really looking to the world as our market.
Thank you for sharing. And as you were speaking, I can only imagine, Pat and CK, you work with many small-scale businesses, and I can imagine they come to you really excited, right, with this innovation they've created. And then you have to give them all the good news about what it means to be an entrepreneur. And so when your stand is setting out, and especially since we have so many entrepreneurs in the room, what are some of the solutions that you've had to kind of come up with for them or with them and help educate them on in order for them to be able to also go to market in a way that keeps them motivated and also be able to scale?
That's a trick. So in case you haven't noticed, any business that's here in this summit has to operate in areas that are three C's, right?
3 C's.
3 C's. So you can go back and write that. And we at Kayana, we operate in 3 C's, which is community, which seems to be the scarlet thread in all the conversations we've been having, and then capacity building, and working collaboratively with institutions. So that is not the tool, I would say. But in all these programs, especially around capacity building, well, we do have the trainings that possibly all accelerators are using. I think for women, and I'll speak specifically for women, and specifically because women continuously have such small and such micro businesses, and we really need to move them into the small to medium stage for it to be attractive for investment. So we work primarily with the entrepreneur, and specifically looking around building their confidence. And we do this in various ways. I was laughing when I saw, is he called Dan? Yeah, when I saw Dan come in, and I'm thinking, which of my entrepreneurs would come late for a panel, jump on the stage, and take the microphone and be able to speak? I can't think of many. So we take a lot of things for granted when we're dealing with female entrepreneurs, because there's so many cultural invisible barriers that many times when we look at the businesses, we don't see. We just see numbers. So at Kayana, we are really, really committed to looking at those invisible, sort of barriers, where we encourage our entrepreneurs to speak every time in a way that they feel comfortable about their business. Even as late as this afternoon, when we were having tea, I was eavesdropping a conversation around the pitching session that's going to happen later, and one of the ladies was like, "Man, I never sent my pitch," and I know TBN takes entrepreneurs through pitching sessions. So that seems like something so simple, but it's really, really it's a real barrier for women. So looking at area, that's just one of the areas in which we work with entrepreneurs to ensure that they're confident, because that confidence is going to go forward into them being able to negotiate when it comes to investors, whether it's with local banks or VCs or whoever. Once you have confidence, that'll happen. I'll also speak very briefly also on some cultural issues that are on the continent. And I think women, if you disagree with me, you can shake your head. But we have our mothers as our first example of women who taught us the knowledge we have around money. And many times it was around a secret, having this thing aside in case everything goes pear-shaped in the family. And so that behavior of speaking openly about money from when we're very young is really not something that we've grown up with. And then now having to unlearn that and then speak openly to ask I remember when we were going through the pitches just last week of some entrepreneurs, none of them had an ask at the end of the pitch. And I don't blame them because it's not something they feel that they would naturally be able to do. So just being able to scale, to work on the entrepreneur and then work with organizations that are already helping them, put systems in place within their businesses so that lack of courage or imposter syndrome or whatever we call it stops being a barrier for them when they think of scaling.
That's such an important point. Thank you for pointing that out. And actually, for those who are investors in the room today, just hearing some of the cultural factors, the fact that there's, potentially a lack of confidence or shyness about asking for certain things, I think sometimes it's okay for us to also, as investors or people who have the money or who do want to invest, to also know that we can ask, what is your ask, right? To make sure that we're actually starting to create that comfort and that ability to have that conversation in a real way. So thank you for pointing that out. It's a really important consideration. All right, CK.
Yeah, first of all, I think this is very hard because listening to an entrepreneur like
Jemima, yeah.
like Jemima, right? I have to pinch myself just not to get excited by the passion and what she's trying to build. That's the spirit of a lot of the entrepreneurs that we meet. And she lives it. She breathes it. She's everything that you see there and the impact. Listening to my brother who's sciencing, I won't repeat the words he said. It becomes hard. But the reason I'm saying it's much difficult than just saying no to an entrepreneur is I attended a conference one day in South Africa in Cape Town, and they were talking about the hubs for investment. And they talked about Cape Town, of course they talked about Nairobi, and they talked about Lagos. And I asked a question and said, so what do the rest of us who do not come from those hubs do to also get invested in? And the best advice I got in that room was move to one of the hubs. And when I moved to Lagos, I was speaking to an entrepreneur, a lawyer there, and I asked him at a cocktail, I said, so what type of lawyer are you? He looked at me, drank his wine and said, what type of lawyer do you want? It speaks to, of course, the attitude and the culture. But that said, we also have entrepreneurs in hubs that are not necessarily, destinations for capital. So what we've had to do is, try to reinvent how, the support ecosystem works. We influence policy. We're currently leading on the Startup Act. We work with corporates to participate with entrepreneurs. So we find that we have to build that ecosystem even before we support that first entrepreneur. That usually takes longer and takes lots of faith, but I think it's something we're committed to doing.
Thank you so much. Okay, so rapid fire, and then we're going to take some Q&A from the audience, and then they're going to go for lunch. Don't worry, I'm going to try and make it quick. We will try and make it quick together, but it's an important one that I don't want to avoid. So it's about access to financing, creative financing solutions. All of you have either had to provide financing, ask for financing, probably have been rejected along the way, also probably received an amount you didn't know what to do with, has to have accountability around that, all of the things involved in raising capital. So I'm going to start with you, Dan, and I'm going to ask each panelist in 1 minute or less to please talk about what you think the creative solutions are to access to financing for our audience in the room today.
That's a tough question, and 55 seconds.
Yep.
We've raised about $100 million over the last 10 years, primarily on projects, and recently $3 million at our holdco. And find funding from who you authentically want to partner with, and just dig deep with it. And I think the reality is you can make all the plans you want. I love Excel. I don't know who loves Excel, but I love Excel. You can make all the plans you want. It's not going to happen. It's not going to be real, right? Like, you're going to make your cash flow forecasts, and so really it's about transparency of what you're pitching, where the risks are, and just being really open and authentic about it. And I think that you can hockey curve, make your projections, but you find the right partner at the right time. So who is your Series A partner is so different from your pre-seed, your idea, the angels. Your angels' journey journey with you a little bit, and they'll drop off because they won't be ready for a Series A or won't have capital for a Series B. So find the right partner at the right stage, but who authentically cares about the same vision that you have.
I love that authenticity. So don't come from scarcity and desperation. Come want to create a transaction that feels authentic. I love that. Thank you.
So I think this morning, the first panel had a bunch of great conversation on it. The trust and transparency, that is absolutely key. I think one of the things, just from a mindset standpoint, is your business is an opportunity for investment, right? It is an opportunity for them to deploy capital. So understanding that you actually have something to offer as well is important. Being willing to say no. And so, like it was said this morning, Dan just mentioned, finding those right partners. The risk is, or the temptation is, to be everything to everybody, but you actually have to understand what your core values are and find the right partners, and they are there. I think the biggest thing is that oftentimes we have to create the opportunity, and then you'll be amazed at where the resources come from.
Perfect. Thank you. So don't forget that you are as valuable as the value you're seeking. Thank you. Go ahead, please, Tim.
Yeah, I think collaboration is the way forward. I've put in my life savings into this business, obviously, and that's the Series A. And together with some investors, we've managed to commercialize the product. Going to the next stage is going to take a lot of faith and understanding, but I think the way forward is really through education. So that's what I'm doing now, is teaching what I know. We need to document it. We need to digitalize it so that we can broadcast this everywhere, particularly in Africa. And so a little bit of time and investment needs to go into developing an ecosystem, which is on a portal that can be looked at, can be studied, can be learned from, and also we can add more value by getting feedback from our partners on this portal. So that becomes a very marketable tool, as you say. This is something investors will look at and try to quantify and try to evaluate.
So always be pitch ready. That's what I'm hearing. Thank you.
First of all, I think from ecosystem building perspective, the ecosystem conveners have a responsibility to build the life cycle capital for these entrepreneurs, TBN and others in the room. But more specifically, for entrepreneurs, my biggest learning when it came to funding was that funding is not an achievement, it's an obligation. So you must reflect on beyond the money. Are you ready for the obligations that come with that funding? Most of us are really not when it comes. So even before it comes, the best source of funding then becomes your customers. Do you have something that is solving a pain for them that is significantly different? But more importantly for me, funding is not an achievement at all. It's an obligation, and you haven't even started to understand what type of obligations you're signing up for.
Thank you. So authenticity, accountability. Got it.
Really powerful. I think I agree with everything that's been said, and the big thing for me is I know we say it a lot around storytelling, but it's not only storytelling, but authentically telling your story so that you're completely connected to what you're saying and what you're pitching and what you're bringing forward, and also will make you recognize, as Dan said, the kind of money that you'll attract. So I think that's a big thing. Even just hearing Jemima just speak briefly about her business, it's authentic, it's real, and already a funder is looking and saying, hey, that's something that I'm passionate about and I'll be willing to partner. So don't put those authentic stories aside, just learn to tell them in a more succinct way. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wow, I really like that, not fundraising, but faith raising almost. The thing about money is that it can take on the nature of its owner. And I think it's one of those rare things that can do that, you know. And so when we first started out, I mean, honestly, I speak as a missionary. When we first started out, God spoke to me and said, don't pray for money, pray for the right hearts to journey with you. And so I like this whole conversation about being aligned with values here, because for us, especially when we work with refugees and we're building things up from the ground, we need people who will be gracious and who would hold that space for us, because sometimes it's just trial and error, which is very much the case in entrepreneurship as well. Yeah.
Thank you. So know your values, to know your value so you can create value. That's what I'm taking away today. Thank you guys so much. I really, truly appreciate your contributions. What a beautiful way to end this morning with all of you. I know we have only very few minutes for Q&A in the audience. All right, so who's our first question? We're going to take about 2, maybe 3, depending on how short they are. Preferably those who have not asked a question yet. And of course, you can network with all of us during lunch today.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Adrian Mugenyi. I'm the founder of the Rehab Clinic in Kampala. My question goes out to the investors. We, people in healthcare, have ethics that we have to follow. I'm just getting a scenario where I've taken, let's say, a loan, and I have to remit $1,000 a month. And I have patients coming in and who have a low turnover, but I have a target to meet. Where will the ethics be? If, for example, I borrowed money to get an X-ray machine, and we have targets of how many X-rays should be done in a month. So if I got funding and I have to remit that amount of money every month, won't I be forced to tell my practitioners, I need you to give me 10 X-rays? And this is where I find it a bit tricky for us who are in healthcare. How do we do business without compromising on people's health? Because the funders do not necessarily know those kinds of excuses. In some practices, we've had where drugs are going to expire, and someone comes up and tells the doctors, we need...
May I kindly interrupt? Please what's the quick question?
Yes, a quick question.
Yes.
For people in healthcare,
yes,
we need to be conscious on how do we generate income
yes,
without necessarily compromising on the quality of our people.
How do we balance the ethics on that end? Okay, that's the first one. And then the second one? Yes, very quickly, please. Let's move that mic real quick.
A rejoinder to that, Dr. Leonard is my name.
Yes, please.
So I'm basically in Uganda, and I've been struggling with the same. How do we get patient capital? You see, everyone looks to be targeting agribusiness, fintechs, and these other things. Who is targeting the healthcare? 1 in 4 people in Uganda has hypertension. And no one is willing to listen to the healthcare providers and understand that we are also giving solutions to these people, only that it is not the end thing happening at the moment. So who is willing to come in and listen to us who are providing healthcare solutions?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So if anyone wants to speak to opportunities specifically regarding health, and then we'll take a third one. Yes, very quickly.
Thanks a lot. My name is Kim, cohort 1. I have a question for the scientists actually on the panel. And the question is actually centered around the buzzword of the day, which is machine learning, artificial intelligence, and the rise of robotics. I'm curious to see or learn and hear from you what you feel the threat is of all that machine learning, especially considering the rate at which it's advancing. Yeah. Just to put context into that, the last version of ChatGPT was said to have an IQ of 160, which already is in line with Albert Einstein. If it's accelerating at a rate of 10 times, the next version is going to have an IQ of 1,600. So where do you feel this great advancement, is it going to benefit Africa, which, if I can say, is still trying to catch up with the last industrial revolution? And do you feel that's going to be an inhibitor to employment?
Okay.
Because a lot of this is going to take away from our livelihoods.
So where's the place of AI and all this in terms of... Okay.
Where's the threat?
Okay, so can we have a quick response to health? We don't want to lose that question. Anyone? And then we get into the AI and where its place in entrepreneurship, especially Africa. Anyone taking for health?
Yeah, I think I'll try to take on that one because, like I said, every entrepreneur is passionate about what they're building, right? And of course, every entrepreneur believes that they need and they deserve, the funding. And if again you're in not one of the hubs, you're going to struggle a lot to attract the type of funding that you need. For the first part of the question, a lot of that was discussed around the values of the type of investors you're looking for. I like what you said about money takes on the character of where you get it from. So you want to understand who is aligned to your values, what you believe, what you're trying to achieve, well knowing that as soon as you probably sign that might change too. But you want to make sure you have conversations with people who are aligned to that. I don't come from a school of thought that believes in 1,000 pitches. I come from a school of thought that says, find out who are the 2-3 people who are most aligned to what you're trying to work on.
Okay.
We'll always struggle to fund everything, but I think one of the things that have stood out for me is be too good, you can't be ignored, and you keep faith raising, and you'll definitely get there.
Okay. Anyone else want to weigh in on health? What do we do if I'm in health and I'm looking for opportunities? I feel like there's 2 people, so I want to represent the whole sector. Anyone else with a quick tip? You can reflect on that, but in the meantime, maybe let's get to AI. What's the role? And it was passed to the scientist on the team. Sorry, man, no pressure.
Sorry, I'm not the scientist, but I can
You're
give
the
you
closest one to us, to the rest
give
of us.
you this advice. Whatever technology you deploy, do it with a conscience. Yeah, I think that's the most important thing, that we look at the problem and apply the technology correctly. So let me give you a very specific thing that I've been thinking about. Imagine if we had AI, geospatial mapping, to determine where all the slums were in Africa, and determine where the plantations are that we could possibly grow kanaf or any other biomass that could be used for building. Can we match these two? Can we match also the people, the communities that need these jobs, and really create something from there quickly and deploy it as fast and effectively as possible? So I don't know if that answers your questions, but I'm happy to discuss more with you down the road. Sorry, one more other thing is we can use AI, especially in 3D printing, for building materials. So it's happening. We hope to roll this type of prefabricated technology out in the future, and I think that's something that even Africa should think about, how to deploy this type of technology.
Okay, a quick follow-up, I think, and then we'll take one last one.
Yeah, so I think, whenever there are challenges on the horizon, many times the flip side of the coin is that there's opportunities with that. And so like any of the technology or like AI, I think it actually presents a lot of opportunity for Africa. And I think also when you don't have a deployed system in place, it allows you to leapfrog what has already been installed someplace else. And we've seen that time and time again. So I actually think that the AI actually presents an opportunity for the continent.
Okay, fantastic. I'll take last one, very quick, and then I'll invite Derek to come up. Please.
Thank you so much. I'm going to make it quick. No introduction for myself. This is to
what's
Patricia.
Your name, my dear?
All right. My name is Jessica. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
This is to Patricia. Pitching basically is putting your best foot forward to get investment. You said you received around 350 pitch decks on your during the submission. Do you have a non-disclosure agreement that you sign? You don't duplicate people's ideas in the organization, because lately, within the African community, you pitch and you find your idea being implemented somewhere else.
That's a good one. So for this particular competition, we were not the ones doing the selection, but I'm sure the organization definitely had an NDA. But I also want to say this, because many women don't bring ideas to market because of the fear of it being copied or replicated. I like to say there's no new idea under the sun. It's really how each of us brings those solutions to market. Yeah, I'm in my events company, we're required, when we pitch, we must give the concept, the idea, the way we are going to execute that event. Sometimes we don't win in fact, very often we don't win the jobs. But there's no way we can go back and say that idea was not given by 4 or 5 other businesses, which many times is the case. So I would say NDAs are great, non-disclosures are great, but at the end of the day, bring your idea with excellence to the market. Be so good that you cannot be ignored.
Fantastic. A big round of applause for our panelists. Wow. Well, a bigger round of applause, please. Very insightful. I'd like to invite Chief Operations Officer Derek Waiswa, who's going to present. We want to, just a token of appreciation, and I'm just going to go ahead and read a couple of names as we present this. Derek, please. Naturally, we'll start with ladies first, I suppose. Okay. So we have Patricia going first. Patricia, I really like your shoes. I'm just saying. Very nice. A round of applause, please. Jemima. There you go. Remember to pose for that picture. Thank you, Jemima. All right. Welcome to Brian. Yes. There you go. There you go. Handing over. Thank you so much for making the time and the effort and for sharing your insights. This one's for Tim. Tim, I'm sure many people want to engage you on the use of AI in this process. Fantastic. You may tell people you're not a scientist. The rest of us are going to say, no, he is. Okay, this one's for CK. There you go. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Dan? Yeah, we all need to learn that move. You come in late, grab the mic, deliver some insightful stuff, and make people go like, ish, how does he do that? And lastly, of course, Safi. Saved you for last there. There you go. Thank you. Asanteni sana. Thank you so much. Yes. And at this point, I'd ask us to just move to the front so we take a group picture. And then in a short while, I'll be giving you instructions about lunch and what you can expect after lunch, all right? Just move forward. Yeah, just the way we are. Picture. I'll squeeze in as well.